we're going to get going. We're going to start out with the flag salute. Roll call.
Tom Collins, Craig Palmisano, Richard Patterson, John Pitts, Margaret Gubernalty, Stephen Giesecke, Michael Ruffey, Andrew Campbell, Michael Richmond.
Here. Okay. This meeting is being held in accordance with New Jersey statute requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act Sunshine Law. Notice of this meeting has been advertised in the press and posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building. All applicants are hereby advised that if you receive board approval tonight, you must come forward and sign a form outlining the procedures for obtaining building permits and mercantile licenses. At the conclusion of your case tonight, please approach the board administrator to sign the provided information sheet. Okay. Can I get approval of minutes for, what was that date?
October 24th.
October 24th?
I'll make that motion. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We're going to swear in some new board members.
Okay. Before I do that, I might as well make the announcements on the agenda because there's some people here. There's 6 cases, so for everyone in the audience on the agenda. 3 of them aren't going to be heard tonight, so I don't want to make you sit here all night. So I'll go through those real quick. The first one, Scott Dorfner, 32 Brunswick Avenue, Block 32, Lot 11. Mr. Golston, you're going to come back next month? Yeah, sure.
Yes, Mr. Manos, Mr. McLaurin prepared his report. The architect was going to add some additional detail to his plan, so we didn't want to put that case onto the board and not be complete, and the board have further questions. So for that one, we are going to submit a new plan to Roger with the details showing the coverages, and that will be for December if the board can hear us then.
Okay, no new notice, correct?
Please.
Okay, and Palma, December 19th?
Yes.
Okay, so for anyone here, I got to say this for the record. So if anyone here is for the Dorfner application, that's going to be heard December 19th, 2024, 7
o'clock.
7 o'clock p.m. in this room. The applicant will not be required to republish or renotice. And then the next one, which was found out late today, there was one woman I reached out to because she had reached out to me, so I gave her the heads up, but there's really no way to get the word out. That's MRD Margate LLC, 9211 Monmouth Avenue, Block 426, Lot 21. That is also going to be heard next month, December 19th, 7 p.m. in this room. The applicant will not be required to republish or renotice. And finally, C Squared LLC, 9510 Ventnor Avenue, Block 129, Lot 45. This is more of an informal announcement because the applicant will return December 19th. That's the dairy bar application, but they will submit a new notice on that one. So anyone here is for that, you'll get a new notice in the mail. Oh, cleared the room out. Okay, and with that being said, I guess we have Palmer. Danny gets sworn in too?
Yeah, he needs to get sworn.
Okay. All right. So we had three new board members. Mr. Tolson, Ms. Rosenberger, and Mr. Danny Adams. And do you all each have an oath?
Yep.
Okay, so what I'm going to ask you to do is stand, raise your right hand. We'll do you all together, and you can repeat after me. Once we're done, you can just sign where it says "bye," and then I'll notarize them, and I'll give them the palma. So, I, and then each state your name.
I, Richard Tolson,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
state, under the authority of the people, so help me God. I do further solemnly swear or affirm that I will be impartially, justly perform all the duties of the office of planning board member according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Good, save me a lot of work, so I usually have to, and yeah, when you get a moment, just sign them, anytime tonight, just get them back to me. So you're now officially, board members, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, now we're going to do approval.
They gotta sing the planning board fight song.
Ah, sorry. All right, approval of decisions and resolutions, number 32, 2024, Cheng Feng Zhang, and number 33, 2004, Daljak Properties LLC. Do I hear a motion? Second? All in favor? Okay. Okay, so we're... Oh, shit, yeah, okay, sorry. All right, our first case is Jeffrey and Joe Hampton, 5 North Huntington Avenue, Block 209.02, Lot 14, located in the S25 zoning district, seeking C variance relief for front yard setback, side yard setback, rear yard setback, building coverage, total landscape coverage, and potentially others for the construction of an expanded porch at the existing single-family home. Current on taxes, water, and sewer payments, proof of advertising, and notifications provided, represented by Eric S. Goldsmith.
Okay, and I'll get Mr. McLaren sworn in for the evening. Mr. McLaren, do you swear affirm the testimony you'll give throughout this evening will be the truth?
I do.
Thanks.
Thank you, Board Chairman, board members. Welcome new members to the Planning Board of Margate City. The report is based on the application of Jeffrey and Jill Hampton, 5 North Huntington Avenue, Block 209.02, Lot 14, located in the S25 zoning district. Again, to expand a front porch, an existing front porch. Deemed complete, and this is a substantial benefit variance, not a hardship variance, but the C1 and C2 criteria which still need to be approved. And testimony. So page 2 is the zoning chart, highlighted and shaded in gray or yellow if it's color, is the variance is needed, and all the other requirements. I do want to point out that the lot area required is 2,500 square feet. They exceed that, and they have 2,700 square feet. The minimum lot width is 40 feet. They meet that. Lot depth is not a requirement, but that's where they gain the area, where the typical lot depth is 62.5 feet. They exceed that at 67.5 feet. So flipping over to page 2 continues the zoning chart, and the plans reviewed and received, and the documents reviewed to formulate this report. So I'll skip right down to it, to section 3, where the variance is required as follows. Minimum front yard setback for the porch on the first floor, whereas a minimum front yard setback based on prevailing setback or minimum required is 5 feet. 4.8 feet exists and 4.8 feet is proposed. So if the average is 3 feet, they still have to meet the 5-foot minimum. So they are seeking 4.8 feet, that's where the front of the house is now. So it's an expansion of a non-conforming front yard setback. Minimum landscape coverage for the total area, whereas a minimum total landscape coverage is 35%, 20% exists, and 15.7% is proposed. Again, this is a reduction of a non-conforming landscape area. The comments, I pretty much already mentioned the comments in the lot area, lot width meet the requirements. Total landscaping is already being reduced to less than what is required. And the concern I have is the front porch will be right up against the driveway, lending itself to reducing the likelihood of being used. Again, that's one reason why we got rid of the side yard driveways, because they weren't being used because they're too narrow. You can't open a door, and people put a fence up and just made it pretty much unusable. And that's pretty much the comments I have for this application.
Thank you, Mr. McLaren. Mr. Chairman, Eric Golsey on behalf of the applicants, Jeffrey and Jill Hampton. Mr. Hampton is here, who has spent a lot of time working with Mr. Barnhart and myself regarding this application. And, you know, just as an aside, this isn't a new house. It's not a big new construction project, but a lot of time has gone into designing this addition to try to make it as something that fits into the neighborhood as much as possible. So even though we're looking at it just as a porch, there's so much more to it to Mr. Hampton. And from the beginning of this, which was several months ago, Roger and I went back and forth on the sketches, and Mr. Hampton was smart enough to hire Mr. Barnhart. But I don't think anybody can really discuss what he's doing to the property better than Mr. Hampton himself, who happens to be here. So if Mr. Manos doesn't mind, I'd like to have him sworn in. He can go through what he's trying to do, and then John can walk through, please, the positive and negative criteria. But I think the board can understand from what Mr. Hampton's about to say that he really wants to engage with the streetscape. He wants to have a house that fits in very well with the neighborhood, that still allows parking in the driveway and still is an improvement over what's there now. So, Jeff, if you don't mind coming up, please. And,
Eric, I have a question.
yeah.
For the non-landscape portion, does that include what's rocks now? Is that included with a non-landscape portion?
I included that as landscaping.
Oh, you did?
Right.
Knowing that it would be turned into landscaping.
Not following you there.
It's
Well,
stones now.
there's plants in the, or there were plants in the stones, so I counted that as landscaping.
Okay, Mr. Hampton, just your name and address for the record, and I'll swear you in.
Yes, Jeffrey Hampton, Jeffrey, Hampton, Hampton, 5 North Huntington Avenue, Margate, New Jersey.
Thank you, and please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you'll give tonight will be the truth?
I do.
Thanks.
Okay.
All right, Jeffrey, you know, we've been dealing with this for a while, and we're finally here, thank goodness,
Oh, really?
for the end of the year. So just tell the board what you've really wanted to do with the house, how we've been back and forth, and what the goal is moving forward with the porch, assuming the board would be kind enough to grant the application.
I appreciate that, and first of all, I want to thank everybody for giving us this opportunity to present this. We appreciate it a great deal. My wife Jill and I spent a number of years looking for a home to purchase in Margate. And our history with Margate was we rented a home here for 7 summers. And we really came to enjoy being a part of the community. And we wanted to buy a home that was, as we viewed it, a traditional Margate home. We did not want to tear down a home. We wanted to renovate an existing home, something that had sort of history with Margate. And so much to the chagrin of our realtor, that's what we looked for a long time. And ultimately, we stumbled upon 5 North Huntington Avenue. It is a house that has been here for 99 years. It has a lot of history with Margate. We've learned about it from our neighbors, and it means a lot to us. So over the winter, when we bought the house last year, we spent some time renovating the indoors of the home, updating it a little bit, and now we want to focus on the outside. Part of our goal is to be able to spend time outside, to be able to be with our neighbors, to be with our family outside. Because of the way the home is situated, there is not a lot of outdoor space, and an outdoor porch would be a natural solution to be able to solve that problem. In some respects, because of the way the house is right now, we're a little bit trapped inside. We sort of learned that over the summer, and we really wanted to be able to be outside and enjoy the outside since we're here at the shore. I mean, the reality is, without being too hokey, I think porch is sort of the quintessential part of shore life. Most of our neighbors do have porches, and we really want to be part of what I would call that porch community. And by that I mean, you think of the morning, you get up, you go outside, you have your cup of coffee with your family, you spend the day, you sort of retreat there at the end of the day, you spend evenings and special time there, and you're able to really be a part of the neighborhood. We're on a fairly active street, Huntington Avenue. There are a lot of people that go up and down the street. We'd like to get to know them, right? We want to become more and more a part of the community. So as part of the porch, we do recognize that we have to be good stewards, right? We have to be good neighbors, and we also have to be mindful of the purposes of the requirements, the zoning requirements. So to that end, what we would do in the existing driveway is that we would shift that driveway. There are 2 cement strips with a partial grass strip, I guess it's called. We would shift that to the right as you face the garage. And why would we do that? Because that will allow for a driveway that is slightly in excess of 10 feet in width. It resolves the issue that someone had raised about the concern about being able to open the door. And our driveway is a little different because as you go down the driveway and get past the area where the porch is, it expands in width. The house jets in, so at that point, it would be 12 and a half feet wide and 16 feet long. So we would have plenty of space to park. This would not in any way deter us from parking in the driveway or force us onto the street. And the other thing that obviously we want to do is to make it look good. It's important to us, not only because it's important to Margate to have landscaping, but it's important to us. We really like to take care of a home, have it present well. So to that end, we will landscape around the front of the porch. And our goal is to plant, if we're able to do so, 2 trees. They may have to be dwarf trees, but we will plant trees and landscape around it to sort of make it look nice and make it, it sort of fit into the neighborhood. And look, the last piece to this may also sound a little hokey. We are empty nesters with 2 adult children that live in New York. This shore house to us is a connector with our adult children. It's a way to get them to be part of our family, and there's no better way than doing that, to be here together, to entice them to come down and having those special moments outside together. So that's why we would ask very much that the relief that we request be granted. I have learned one thing. I've read a lot about the work that you all do, and I see now that you all spend a lot of time and effort doing it and taking it very seriously, and we appreciate that, and we thank you for that effort, and I appreciate you allowing me this time before you today.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we do have Mr. Barnhart. I'm going to ask Mr. Manos to swear him in to go through the positive and negative criteria, and we won't belabor the point. I think Mr. Hampton said what needed to be said probably better than John and I can, but at least John can walk through the plan regarding what he has designed here. So,
Okay, Mr. Barnhart, just name and address, please.
John Barnhart, office address 400 North Dover Avenue, Atlantic City.
And please raise your right hand. You swear affirm the testimony you'll give this evening will be the truth?
I do.
Okay, and Mr. Barnhart's, we obviously accept his
He's been here as a-
qualifications as an engineer and planner.
Yeah.
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank
All
you.
right, John, just walk us through the plan, I think.
Sure.
Point
So
out.
our client very clearly explained what his proposal is and what his intentions are. Just real quick, the plan you have before you is the plan that was submitted with the application. The tan shaded area here is the proposed area of expansion. If you visit the site or if you look at the upper left corner of the existing survey, there's just a small stoop area with some stairs down now. And what our client would like to do is expand that. It will be at the same elevation as the porch that exists now, but obviously a larger area so you can actually put some chairs out and enjoy your neighborhood as Mr. Hampton described. A case like this is really about impacts to your neighbors. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. From a variance justification perspective, we believe that this would fall under the C2 criteria, where the benefits outweigh the detriments. The benefits of this project are continued maintenance and beautification of a property. While obviously it creates better and nicer space for our client, it also helps to beautify the property for the neighborhood. And is very consistent with the neighborhood. So for that reason, we believe that the positive criteria is established. But as I mentioned, the real crux of an application like this is the negative criteria, and that is there a substantial detriment to the neighborhood or the public good? And if you look at the layout of this block, it's rather interesting. Our neighbor to what I'll say to the north or going away from the ocean will essentially not see this project once it's completed because the existing home comes out to 4.8 feet in the front yard, which is what the proposed porch intends to match. So there would be no additional impact from an air, light, and open space or view corridor blockage with regard to our neighbor to the north. Our neighbor to the south, if you visit the site, has essentially the identical home. It's laid out precisely the same. In fact, he has, I don't know when, but he has apparently expanded his porch at some point. And it is very similar to the character of what Mr. Hampton is proposing here. So we believe that there is no substantial negative impact to the surrounding properties or the public good. And with regard to the zone plan or zoning ordinance, we are only here requesting 2 variances, which we consider to be relatively minor variances. There are a number of existing nonconformities, but with a home of this age, and of this layout, in order to do anything to enhance it or beautify it or take it, or bring it to more current day standards of to enjoy living, there's going to be deviations that are necessary to make that happen. And the deviations we believe are very minor and make sense for the property. So, as I mentioned, the front yard setback, we're at 4.8 feet, matching the front wall of the home, which is a variance. And then overall landscape coverage is going down slightly as a result of the construction of this porch area. Right now, if you visited the site, you would see the existing porch, and then adjacent to it, it's just a stone area, which I think at one point might have had some shrubs or bushes in it. The intention is, upon completion of this, is then to appropriately landscape in front of the porch next to the new stairs, and not just have it be a stone bed. So, with regard to the second prong of the negative criteria, is there a substantial detriment to the zone plan or zoning ordinance? We believe that because of the de minimis request with regard to the two variances that are necessary here, there is no substantial detriment, and that the variances can be granted.
Mr. Chairman, we would rest based upon Mr. Barnhart and Mr. Hampton's testimony, subject, of course, to answering questions if the board has them or members of the public, but we think we've established a positive and negative. Mr. Hampton's testimony probably carries the day with regard to what he wants to do with the property, so we'll leave it to the board.
I have a question on that real quick. The front steps, they're going to be at least 2 feet back from the property line?
Yes, that is the intention, yes.
Okay.
So in the final design of those stairs, it may be possible that one of the risers needs to recess into the porch slightly to make sure that 2 feet is maintained.
Okay.
John, talk about the
Yes, sir.
ribbons. The concrete ribbons are going to be removed and centered in that 10-foot-6 opening?
That's what Mr. Hampton just described, so yes, assuming we're fortunate enough to receive an approval, we will show that as a condition of the approval on a revised plan.
In my eyes, it really has to be.
Yeah,
Yeah,
understood,
I agree, yes.
understood, and Mr. Hampton
So,
is agreeable to do
And
that.
it's 10-foot-6 we're ending up with.
10, yeah, it's 10.6 actually, so it's,
More than that.
it's actually a little bit more than 10'6", honestly, but,
10 and a half, yes.
yeah.
Now,
So,
Roger, what do we allow for driveways when we do a new home? 9 foot, is it?
Well, a legal parking space is 9 feet by 18 feet. But the driveway has to be at least 1 foot off the property line.
Oh, so there's.
So you need 10 foot.
So that's 10 feet. And that's what we're matching here.
Right.
A little bit more. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I think Roger's concern was the fact that the wheel strip was up against the porch, that was what your major concern was?
Yeah, because all the older homes had the driveways on the side, people put a fence up, and then
Yeah.
they don't use the driveway anymore, they park on the street.
Right.
And the driveway becomes a patio.
Yeah, so we will center those wheel strips to pull the one away from the edge of the edge of the porch.
Okay.
But still maintain the 1 foot on the right side?
Correct. And they have a room for that.
They have the room, yeah, we have the room to maintain that, yes.
We have a foot .6 and more than we need.
Yeah.
Is that the area where the rocks are along the fence? So that'll be at least 1 foot with 6 from that fence line where the rocks are along the side?
There's some stone here, you mean?
Yes,
Yes, correct. So that concrete is going to go toward that property
but
line.
there's still gonna be.
There'll still be
that
some
space.
grass there, yes.
Okay.
The deck is going to be constructed with deck boards, correct? It's not going to be like a fiberglass deck.
No, it's not going to be fiberglass. It's going to be a frame deck. Or
So, yeah,
composite
so
or-
there's a slight amount of permeability with that because, you know, you have the spaces in between the deck boards. So it's not like you're making it totally impervious.
Correct.
Yeah, right. Okay. Anybody else from the board? Okay. Anyone from the public like to speak? Okay, public portion's closed.
I
Everything
think,
else?
Mr. Chairman, it's a fairly subtle application, as Mr. Hampton said, trying to keep the character of the street, trying to keep the house from being demolished and rebuilt. We believe it to be a very tastefully, designed deck from Mr. Barnhart, but I'll leave it up to the board to let us know what to do.
Okay.
And,
Okay,
yeah, Roger, I noted, your report noted 2 street trees if they can fit. Do we need to address that at all, or just if they can fit them, put them?
If they can fit them, put them in there.
Okay.
Brickwork is 21 inches high. Where the grass strip will be, it's roughly 21 inches. Kind of narrow, right? Too narrow for a tree, right?
No, you can put them behind the sidewalk or in front of the sidewalk. He gets
No,
2
I'm
trees,
saying that the strip is 21 inches.
so he can put them there or put them behind the sidewalk, either place.
Put them on the front lawn.
That's, Mr. Patterson's correct. That's good. 2 trees is fine.
We'll say work with Roger to
Yeah,
where
fine.
the 2 trees.
Wherever
All
they go, whether it's in front or behind, Mr. Hampton, Mr. and Mrs. Hampton will put them in.
Okay, so it's 2C variances. I'll summarize them. The front yard setback to the porch, the house is at 4.8 feet from the front yard. That's where they're proposing the porch, but the requirement's 5 feet. And then the landscape, the total landscape coverage, 35% is the requirement, and they're gonna be at 15.7%. The conditions, I'll just note that they're gonna shift the driveway over to the right while also maintaining that 1-foot side yard setback to the driveway on the right side. They'll work with Roger to put two trees in where they can fit them. And then I'll just note the standard conditions that we put in every resolution. Anything else in Mr. McLaren's report, unless otherwise addressed, applicant will comply with any representations it made during the course of the hearing and subject to any outside approvals that may be necessary. So if there's no other questions, we'll
I have
need
one clarification on that. The stone area along, where you're moving the driveway over, where the stones are now, what are we doing with that?
Landscaping.
On the right side?
Yes. There was just stones there now. So we're going to add grass, for the stones to count as landscape coverage, they have to have plants in them.
Okay.
We're gonna turn that into lawn.
Okay.
Okay, better.
I'll note that as a condition
Fine.
too. Turn stones on side into lawn. I'll articulate that better though.
How wide is that little spot that you're talking about?
1.6 feet.
So when we center the wheel strips, it's gonna be, yeah,
At least 1
probably
foot.
about a foot, foot and a half.
About a foot and a half, Brett?
Yeah.
Quite all.
It's better than nothing. I mean, it's better than the stone, so it
Well,
works.
what it does is it gives a nice location for stormwater runoff that's on that concrete to be able to have an area for it to infiltrate.
Getting absorbed before it goes onto the neighbor's property. We have to keep all the water on site anyway, so better than, like Roger said, better than just the rocks.
Anything else?
I have a question. I drove by the property today and I noticed you have new HVAC, air, oh, sorry. I drove by the property today and I noticed that there's new, air conditioning units just towards the garage from where the proposed porch is. Are you planning on having any vertical, obstruction to, block that view to the,
Yeah, he's going to.
Yes, we're intending to close it. We just had you close it because we hadn't yet put the porch in, so that it will be blocked.
so you'll have a solid wall there?
You will not see it from the street.
You have to speak
Yeah,
into the
Jeffrey, come
microphone.
on up and, yeah.
It goes onto the record, that's why.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you'll see it. You won't see it from the street. It will be, I guess, I don't know how to describe it, slatted,
Yeah,
so
slatted.
that the air can still come through.
Okay.
You can't put solid around an air conditioning unit, but yes, but it will be enclosed. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
All right. We need a motion and a second and then a roll call vote.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Richard Patterson?
We're always glad to see old houses being restored, and you have very little to work with here. Usually, we're pretty sticklers on landscaping. But I appreciate everything you're doing. I had the same concern, apparently everybody did, that the car wouldn't fit in there, and I was gonna say move the strips over, which you've already taken care of, so. I know 10 and a half feet isn't much, but it's more than what's required, and I think it'll be okay, so I approve the application.
Michael Richmond?
Yeah, I actually agree that having a front porch fits into the neighborhood, and I think it is actually an improvement to the neighborhood, so I'm going to approve it.
Stephen Giesecke?
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with my fellow board members. My biggest concern was the parking, because it's such a serious issue, but you're keeping the house. I approve.
Dan Adams?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with everybody. I liked Mr. Hampton's presentation on his demeanor, what he looked to keep the property and the look of the property. And having a front porch on my house, I agree with you. It gives you a chance to get to know your neighbors and to get to know your friends. And the fact that you're shifting the driveway over will give enough access. I was concerned about door opening and that, but I agree and I grant the application as well.
John Pitts?
Yeah, we can't afford to give up any more green space in Margate. We're already among the highest non-permeable surfaces in the state. We We talked about all the issues with, sea level rise and that sort of thing, but we're already well under, as it exists, the allowable landscape. I'm going to deny the application.
Drew Campbell?
Thanks, Greg. I think the porch will be a really nice improvement to the street. I think you live on the best street in Margate. There's no doubt. Everyone who lives on that street is just great people. The fact that you already updated the house, the inside, and updated it and not tore it down and turned it into a 6-bedroom thing that just happens to be, I really appreciate that, keeping it in its pleasant state. So I'm going to approve the application.
Rich Tolson?
You know, coming in as my first meeting, I anticipated being quiet, but sticking to my true nature, I will speak up. I think the preservation of any of the traditional homes in Margate is valuable. I think the effect on the impervious surface in a traditional home is less than what could go there if torn down and replaced as was just described. So I appreciate the fact that you're saving a new home. We moved here 4.5 years ago into a home that was built in 1963, and it'll be the last one that I live in. So I support this application.
Okay. Patty Rosenberg?
I also live in a home that is nearly 100 years old, and I appreciate your efforts to maintain this house. I think by having a raised deck as opposed to a stone a foundation gives us, still allows permeation under the deck. I would also suggest that you could use permeable blocks with grass that grows in between it for your strips in your driveway, which might add some more permeation in the area. So with that, I would agree and approve this.
Craig Palmisano?
Yes, outdoor living in the summertime is a wonderful thing here at the shore. Outdoor living is what we want here. I was going to say no on this as soon as I saw the drawing of the driveway and the deck up against it. And with you moving the strips of concrete and making it a usable driveway, I'm very happy with it. And I hope you enjoy it and you keep your old house, and I approve.
The application is approved with 8 in favor and 1 opposed.
Okay. Our next case is Timothy, and I'm not going to even attempt to, how do you,
Tom Sensen.
what is it?
Mr. Pitt was correct, Tom Sensen.
Okay, Tom Sensen. LLC, 202 North Fredericksburg Avenue, Block 401, Lot 6, located in the S30 zoning district, seeking C variance relief for side yard setback and potentially others for the renovation of an existing single-family home. Current on taxes, water and sewer payments, proof of advertising, and notifications provided. Represented by Eric Holstein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. McLaren, would you like me to begin, or would you like to?
I'll read it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. The report is based on the application of Timmy T, we'll call it, 202 North Fredericksburg Avenue, Block 401, Lot 6, located in S30 zoning district. FEMA zone elevation 8. Required first floor elevation, the bottom is elevation 11, with allowable building height of 30 feet above first floor. Seeking C variances. If deemed complete, this is both a hardship variance and a substantial benefit variance case. So the C1 and C2 criteria have to be testified to. The applicant is seeking relief from the ordinance of the City of Margate in order to renovate an existing one-story single-family dwelling with a non-compliant basement or ground floor and convert to crawl space. For 2 stories over, when I first looked at it, I thought you were putting parking underneath, but you're not. On an undersized lot, the lot width is 10 feet less than what is required in this location. The side yard setbacks will not meet the required and will necessitate variances for both sides, as well as combined side yard setback. The structure abides by the ordinance in regard to number of stories on a lot less than 40 feet. The second floor will be constructed above the existing first floor. So the zoning chart is on page 2. Highlighted in yellow or shaded in are the variances identified. Continue on page 3 in the zoning chart, additional variances. And the documents reviewed, including the plans by Keith Peacock, based on the survey provided by Bob Catalano. No waivers have been requested as far as I could tell. The variances are required as follows. Side yard setback to the left for the building, whereas the minimum side yard setback of a principal structure is 5 feet, 2.3 feet, 2.36 feet exists, and 2.36 feet is proposed. It's an expansion of a non-conforming setback. Side yard setback combined, whereas the minimum combined side yard setback of a principal structure is 37% of the lot width, or 11.1 feet, 8.86 feet exists, and 8.8 feet, 86 feet is proposed. Side yard setback to the left for the deck. The deck is a new structure, so that triggers another variance. Same thing as side yard setback to the house, 5 feet is required, 2.36 feet is proposed if it's squared off at the edge of the house. Also, in addition, landscape coverage for the front yard, where they are removing all the concrete in the backyard to comply with the total landscape coverage. They are making the driveway considerably wider in the front for double-wide parking, and it is pretty deep, so. And again, the front of the house is where the front yard starts, so it's a large front yard. And 27.9% is proposed, where 60% is required. I also want to point out a couple things where they are getting rid of the non-compliant portion of this house by getting rid of the basement. That triggers higher insurance rates for both the city and the CRS program, and also for the homeowner. So in theory, if that basement is a habitable space, they could lift that entire structure to base flood +3. In essence, you have a 2-story structure higher, and they're just, basically, it's an internal lift where they're not lifting the house, but they're adding what they could lift above the first floor. Does everybody follow that? Clear as mud? Okay. So, again, they are preserving an existing house, and this house has been up for sale for quite a long time, I believe, and a bunch of realtors will call me up, what can I do for this house, what can I do for this property? It's very limited. So actually, what they're doing is probably the best thing that could be done on this property. All landscape requirements shall be met in regard to shrubs and trees. Again, they could put 2 shrub trees, make sure they comply with the number of shrub counts for the front yard and the side yard, or total yard. And also, just want to point out that the water service is off of, was it Monmouth Avenue, I believe it? And it goes behind, and there's an easement in the back. I know there was an issue there with the house that was built on the corner. And so I just wanted to point it out, that easement still exists, and that water line still is in place. So it's a new water line, so just reuse the new water line if you can. And I really have no other comments at this point in time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. McLarnon. So this is really like a technical legal case, and I do want to kind of follow up on a lot of what Mr. McLarnon said, and I'll certainly submit this to Mr. Manos. Under the State of New Jersey flood mitigation statute, because this basement is actually a habitable full-story basement, the entire house could be lifted from under the basement to the appropriate base flood with a crawl space. If that were done, we would not need to come back before the board because the flood mitigation statute overrides Margate zoning code and the municipal land use law. So what they're doing by filling in the basement is getting rid of an otherwise unfortunate problem, which is a habitable basement. No one wants to have a habitable basement in Margate with all we've dealt with Sandy, and since then, plus it is bad for this community rating system, the CRS. So they're going to fill in the basement, which Mr. Alexander is going to explain in a minute, and build a second floor on top of what's there now, rather than excavate from underneath and raise it up. If they excavated it from underneath and raised it up, which does not need any variances, the house would be higher than is being proposed presently. So we think this is a better option. We think by coming before the board, even though we do have a pretty close side setback on the left, 2.36 where 5 is required. Once again, if we went the first route, we wouldn't have to be here, and it would still be 2.36 feet, but higher than it is now. With that, we think this is a better planning alternative. And we talk all the time about the positive and negative criteria. If we did the lift from underneath, it would be a little bit more of a negative because the house would be higher, 2.36 feet from the property line. This is a benefit to the property owners along Monmouth, one of whom is a great gentleman who happens to be here tonight. I'm sure he'll talk during public session about the fact that it is close to his house, and we know it's close to his house, but the option makes the house higher and just as close. But by filling in the basement, and we talk about what's a real basement, what's not a real basement. This basement is actually, we'll testify in a second, enough headroom. It's 8 feet of headroom. Plus the additional crawl space we'd have to build it on by raising it up would put the house way too high, too close for comfort. So we think this is a much better planning alternative. Having said that, and Leo, I'm not sure if you want to get into the details or if you want me to get into the details of the flood mitigation statute and the purposes for that, but I think the board has dealt with a lot of these raise cases where if you're raising it and not expanding the footprint, we don't have to be here as long as we're taking the house from the lowest habitable level to base flood plus whatever the requirement is presently. I have a little bit of a brief I did on that, but I don't know if the board wants to.
Yeah, under the state law, they can take the house, as I think most of the board members know, you can take a non-flood compliant house and go straight up to the base flood elevation plus 3 feet without having to come to the board for any variances. And there's a case that Judge Blee decided out of Longport where there was, I think, you would know it better than me, a 2.5-story home with a basement, and they raised it up, so they got a basement, they got like a 4-story home out of it. And I think that's Derek's point. What he's saying is we could do that and be higher. Instead, we're going to fill in the basement and add a second story, if I was accurate in saying that.
Having said that, I think it's important for the board to at least know what the house is like on the inside. Mr. Alexander, who's a representative of the current property owners, here to be sworn in, and he'll describe the house in detail and what he has proposed. One thing I do want to bring up, I did have some conversations with the neighbor. We looked at some other options about possibly moving it, and the architect couldn't figure out a way to make that work. So it was either the second floor or the raise. We think this is less of an obstruction, but again, we'll hear from the public in a few minutes, I guess. But if we could swear Mr. Alexander in, he'll describe what we have going on and kind of what we're going to do with the house.
Okay, Mr. Alexander, just your name and address, please.
My name's Charles Alexander, 126 Beavertown Road, Hamilton, New Jersey is my company address.
Okay, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes.
And you're the contractor for the applicant?
Yes, I am the contractor. I'm also Tim T's business partner. I'm not Tim T. I live on the island. I work on the island, so I'm his contractor on the island.
So walk us through, you heard what we discussed about the raise from underneath versus putting the second floor on, the thought process that went into that, and the site constraints that we're kind of restricted with, because our lot is narrow. We can't go 2.5 stories. The most we can go is 2 under Margate's ordinance. But let's talk about the house and the fact that it does have a real usable basement that could sustain habitable space if necessary, and has in the past, I guess.
Yes, the basement is the first full usable 7-foot high ceiling basement that I've seen, on islands, certainly in Margate. And the initial intent was to, remodel the house as it sits. But, for us that live here, we know that floodwaters come and raising the house and eliminating the basement is the right thing to do. But we lose that square footage. So, I suggested that let's take the roof off and add a second floor to it and bring the house to, flood compliant. Flood vents, build the basement in, physically fill it in to at or above grade, give them some kayak storage underneath and do a complete remodel, bringing the entire house up with, completely to code, all new electric, plumbing, everything.
And that would be instead of bringing it up from underneath, which we don't want to be opportunistic and take advantage of that, from Mr. Mano said.
True.
To the extent that was an option that was on the table, or the only option, it's one that would be a higher house without having to be here, but we think a slightly lower house that's more tastefully done would be a better option, correct?
Absolutely.
Walk us through what those two different homes would look like.
Well, I mean, if we raised it in place, we would be at 8 foot plus 4, to the bottom of the basement. So we would be, the bottom of the basement, so we would have a crawl space and then a basement and then the first floor. So Roger's right, we would technically be higher if we raised it in that fashion. What we're doing keeps the house lower. It keeps the front porch area, as other people mentioned, we all want porches here on the shore, so, it keeps it at a decent level, 5 foot high off the ground. We think we can make the house look presentable from the street. We can keep it looking nice, we can maintain the symmetry, we can, perform the landscaping that's required by the city, the street trees, and make it look like a beautiful property that's now flood compliant.
Basically, what we're doing on this house is taking the roof off, taking all the siding off, gutting the whole interior.
That is
Throwing the
correct.
basement in. So all you're leaving is the 4 outside walls.
That is correct.
Correct. And you're going with the second floor.
Well, that's not,
Just so everybody knows, that's what we're doing.
that's not really true. You're leaving the foundation, right?
Well, the foundation and the first floor frame.
Right. So they're not just leaving the walls, right, but I mean, they're leaving the foundation too.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
exterior
right,
walls,
right,
4 exterior
right.
walls with the foundation.
right.
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 It's a complete gut.
Same sill plate.
Yes, the same sill plate.
So you're just adding one floor.
We're just adding one floor.
I'm looking at this photo. It looks like, what do you have, like about maybe 6 feet from the ground level up to the bottom of
That
the
is about
existing
to the
porch?
bottom of the first floor. Or the existing porch is probably 8 inches lower than the height of the first floor.
But if you're standing on the ground and you look up at the porch, existing porch on the front,
The concrete porch,
what's
yes.
that, about 6, 8 feet?
It's about 5 foot. It's right
It's only
about
about 5 feet.
eye level.
So, the basement itself would start there, and then so it goes kind of like halfway into the ground.
That is correct. So there's actually a side door on the house now with 2 steps down that goes into the basement.
And so, that space will then become kind of like storage space, as you
Storage
said, for your
space.
kayaks, and so
It's
it's only gonna be like about maybe 5 feet?
Yeah, listen, it's not optimal for storage, but you can still put your lawn
It's
chairs, your
good.
kayaks, you'll, it'll be hard to walk around, but you can
What
hump
it
down
does,
there.
Mr. Giuseppe, it makes it not habitable, so
That's
that's the key. It makes it flood compliant, not habitable. We have to file a non-conversion anyway, but this, you couldn't even switch that. I think we're all aware that people file non-conversion. but if
You don't have to file a non-conversion if it's less than 6 feet.
Correct, but I'm saying, if it were high enough,
Right,
and people
right.
filed a non-conversion, then they still use the space.
Right.
This really couldn't be used for living.
No.
So it's a big crawl space.
Yeah.
Is it gonna be ground, or is it gonna be cemented over?
I'm sure we will concrete it.
Concrete? And there's no expansion in the front or the back or anything?
No, we want to use the existing foundation, it's in good condition, it's cinder block, and use the exact footprint that's there now, and just regain our square footage by going up and give us a good layout.
So in your flood certificate, it'll go from your lowest rated floor going from 5 to about 12.
That is correct.
So that'll be significant savings.
Roger, I have a question. On the elevation, it says required 14, and they're going to have 12, but it says conforming.
It's zone elevation 12 or 8.
It says BFE plus 4 is 14 required, and they're going to have 12.
Go back to the first page where it's an 8 zone. I probably had a 10 zone.
Oh, okay. So, no variance.
All right.
Okay,
They'll be compliant with that.
got it.
I have a question on the curb cut. How big is that curb cut?
I believe that Roger's gonna make us do a 9-foot curb cut, which we will then have, ribbons or 2 parking spots,
One
whatever.
9-foot curb cut,
One 9-foot curb cut
where you can go up to two park
to
side
2
by side.
parking spots.
Okay,
That's
'cause
usually what Roger allows us to
Because
do.
everybody on the street has a 9-foot curb cut, nobody on that street has
No,
one.
that's gonna stay.
Nobody has an
That'll stay.
18-foot curb cut.
That'll be the same.
And again, Mr. Palmisano, when we started talking about this project, Tim said, we don't want to go for anything that's going to be difficult, because he knows how important it is to keep the uniformity on the street.
Aren't you allowed 10 foot?
Yes.
What you're saying, Mike, that he can go 10
My
foot
mistake,
without a
10
variance.
foot.
We're not asking for a variance.
You can go 10 foot without a variance.
Right.
I'm thinking of Ventnor. Ventnor, he maybe do 9 foot.
Don't ever confuse us with that.
I will.
I just have a question about the distance where the stairs are on the side of the property now. Am I reading that correct, that that'll be 3.16 feet from the property line?
The stairs that are there now, or
No, the ones that you're putting in on, that are gonna go on the side of the property versus the front. Am I reading that correctly, that it says 3.16 feet to the property line?
Yes, we would want the stairs on the left-hand side of that lower deck.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, I just wanna understand, is that 3.16 feet from the stairs to the property line?
Yeah.
On that side?
Yes, because the setback of the home, we wanted to bring the stairs all the way to the left as much as possible to keep it out of the way of the driveway and the cars.
And the 2 areas on each side will become landscape grass areas?
Yes.
And that'll be 2.36 feet on the one side, and from 6.9 feet down to 3.16, back to like 6.9 feet.
Yeah, on the right
On the
side,
right
we
side.
want to maintain,
Okay.
a sidewalk to the backyard, if you will.
All right.
Plus, I'll give you a landing wide enough to make the turn,
Of course.
All right. Anybody else from the board?
Yeah, any consideration to do anything to increase the permeable coverage on that front yard? Right now, it's all concrete for the 2 parking spaces. Would you, as our new planning board members mentioned in the previous case, permeable pavers, could you do strips, anything to give us back a little?
Well, I know we're reducing the amount of concrete in the backyard to increase some permeability there. I'm sure we could do ribbons in the front yard to increase, instead of a driveway, to increase permeability. But I think overall, I believe we are increasing the permeability slightly, but,
Well, overall, we're increasing it a lot, but the front
Overall,
yard, I think
you're
Mr.
increasing it
Pitts
a
is
lot.
saying, we're at 31, we're going to 44, which is great, but the front yard landscaping, if there's a way to get that up, we're trying to figure that out. Not the back, but if there's any way you can do something in the front to mitigate, would be very helpful.
Well, couldn't you put 2 ribbons in the front? Like, what, you know what I'm saying, center it, like,
or it's,
1 to 2. Yeah, that's the problem.
Uh,
One 10-foot curb cut.
okay, well, that's an issue. Yeah.
well, maybe
So,
we could
I
do so many feet of concrete and then start the ribbons.
That would be good.
Something like that to increase the front yard permeability and, still provide enough room to get the car in there.
How much are you reducing? It says here you don't know.
So for front yard, it wasn't provided on the plan. For the overall landscaping,
I understand, with the front yard, you don't know what it was before.
we know that because the driveway's being expanded. We don't know.
But if you put ribbons halfway back, maybe you're not reducing it, then it's a existing non-conforming.
We could certainly work with Roger to come up with a
Yes.
number. So if it's at 27, we can probably get that to easily 30.
Eric, another idea is maybe shorten the driveway so your cars aren't parking right up against the house.
That would reduce a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we need room for landscaping anyway, but we would want some sidewalk to not
But you
get
can
your feet
continue your
dirty.
sidewalk
get up the
further
steps.
down.
So it's not driveway, but it's a much narrower sidewalk. That would
Yeah, we have enough room in the front. We could probably do 6 foot of landscaping in front of the decks, before the driveway and then the street.
Yeah, that's good. All right, we would I have to give you a calculation, I mean, that's something we would.
Well, it's better than what you have now.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, they are meeting the overall, but I think if you could reduce that driveway length a little bit, you can gain landscape area closer to the house.
Right.
Well, we just rocked it 6 feet by 9 feet wide times 2, so that would be 108 square feet that we pick up right away.
That's more than you're providing now.
Yeah.
I think it would be nicer for the house, too.
Good?
Wonderful.
All right, we're good with that? You good with that?
I'm absolutely good with that.
Okay. All right, anybody else from the board? Anyone from the public like to speak?
Just your name and address, and I'll swear you in.
Sure. Howard Freeman, 7403 Monmouth Ave.
Freeman?
Freeman.
Okay. Please raise your right hand. You swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I've owned the property at 7403 Monmouth for over 20 years, and first time I appeared before the board, so thank you for the opportunity. As we heard earlier, one of the real nice things of Margate is the summertime's outdoor space. It so happens that our property backyard backs up to the left side of the 202 Fredericksburg house. So that's our backyard outdoor space where we enjoy time. Also, as mentioned, the house is 2.3 feet from the property line. What that means is that if I put my arm out, I touch the house. What it also means is that the existing storm door that's there cannot open without hitting the fence. I mean, that's how tight that space is. So my concern when I saw the application for the variance is that as we go up higher, we're essentially peering right down into the space. We're essentially getting closer because the angle of view is less than 180 at this point in time. You can imagine as we go higher also having the eaves and the gutters, and on some of these days where we have the bigger storms, the water already comes over the fence into our yard. So with a little bit of wind, it will be several feet into the yard. So my concern is purely out of the proximity to the yard in that point in time and the ability to enjoy the space without a detriment. I do think there are options for improvement. Certainly, the house may be able to be improved respecting the side yard setbacks, which is our rear yard. That's one of the purposes we have setbacks, is to provide empty space, open space, a little bit of privacy. You can imagine 2 feet away, extending a window unit out, the noise overhanging. You can imagine if someone put an alarm clock on their nightstand, which is the bedroom window 2 feet away, a radio at that point in time. It was mentioned that there was a supply line on our property that happens to supply the home behind us, which is 202, and there was an issue with it about a year ago. We voluntarily moved the pipe, had a new one installed with the help of the city, using the city recommended contractor. So we're aware of the property kind of limitation and what happens in that area. And then we did some work on our house within the guidelines of not requiring a variance. So I think while this is detrimental to us, the really only benefit it may provide is to the contractor, right? And there's options there. So it can be renovated within the existing space. It can be added to within the, allotted guided setbacks that were, approved in the planning
You're
commission.
talking about not putting a second floor on.
I don't know, or if the second
No,
floor
that's
can be
right.
put in the setback, right?
In a setback?
Respecting the 5 feet.
Move it back in another 2.5 feet.
Correct. I see houses in Margate where the second floor is inset, and then there's a little sub-roof over the first floor when they've been added to. So I think that's an option. And then the third option is in the front of the house, there is ample space, I believe, to the front yard setback. If it's deemed necessary to add living space, that seems like a very appropriate area that it can be done without requiring any type of variance. So I respectfully ask you to consider those potential options. I also do have a question.
This would be your view from your deck of the house, the new house?
Yeah, well, I have a question about that, because when I look at the initial demo plans, it shows some windows being removed. And it also, when I look at the floor plan, shows more windows than what that view is. So I do have some questions about whether that actually matches or not.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is this your house?
That is our house. Yes. So,
So this house has got a high foundation and is 2 stories.
correct. That's correct. Yeah,
And you built that house?
we did. Well, we had a contractor build it,
Is
yeah.
there a third floor on that house?
There is.
There's a.
Well, a half floor, yeah, towards the front.
So 2.5 stories?
Yes.
Over parking?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
That's like 40 feet in the air. Okay.
I'm not sure of the exact height. Yeah.
Just unsure.
Yeah.
So when you bought the house or you built the house, that house was existing?
Absolutely.
And
It has been for 20 years
Right,
that we've been there.
so the setback was to whatever it was
Absolutely.
when you built the house?
Correct.
Right. And then, but you built a house that towered over that house by a story and a half, right? Am I right?
Well, we built a house within
Okay,
the spectrum,
right,
you know.
right.
Yeah, what's
but-
permitted.
Yeah.
That's his new house.
So this
Yeah,
is
yeah.
your no house?
Yeah,
So when you built this house, you were way over, above the,
yeah, but way set back,
right?
right?
Okay.
Maybe 20 feet back.
You're 20 feet back?
Well,
You're 2.3.
15 to 20, I would say, yeah.
Okay. Right,
Nice row of arborvitae.
okay.
Yeah.
So your setback from the house in question that we're talking about now,
Yes.
from that house to your house, how close is that?
I would say it's 15 to 20 feet. I don't remember offhand
Right,
without
okay.
the plans in front of me.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Any other questions from the board? You have anything else?
I don't know. I was just wondering about the plans and what appears to be a discrepancy of that side build-out.
So what are you saying, that you would kind of maybe like to see less windows there, or what?
I'm just not sure what's being put there.
Right.
Yeah, from the
Well, I
plans.
do know that there's a building code that if you have
fire
windows,
code.
huh?
For the fire code.
Yeah, there's a fire code, and Mr. Adams can, if you're closer than 3 feet, you have to have there's only a certain amount of windows that you can put into that building. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
So, and
number
you have
do we know?
And I think, I'm pretty sure that the windows that are new have to be like either fire rated or, so there's not gonna be, I don't think there's gonna be as many windows that are shown on the plan that are actually going, but I can't speak to that
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, that was my question.
That's a building department thing. Okay, so, all right,
All right, great.
thank you. All right, anything else, anyone else from the public?
Windows there now?
Okay, public portion's closed. Anybody else from the board? All right,
And we respect the neighbors. We obviously know that anytime we're in close quarters, it's going to affect someone, but we think this is a better option than the initial option we discussed, and house will be lower and a little less obtrusive, but of course, that's, and then with regard to the construction of the house, going to be approved by construction code official, and if it's too close, they're going to have to put in fire-rated windows or no windows, and
Right.
they're going to comply. We're not asking for any
right,
variance
exactly.
from the construction code, just from the zoning code, so.
We could put
It's all
gutters
good.
on that side?
Hmm?
You could put gutters on that side?
We would rest, unless the board has any further questions.
Leo?
Yeah, do we want to make that a condition, note that as a condition, the gutters?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I thought that was code.
On the side facing 7403 Mona. Okay, so it's 3 variances, C variances, and I'll summarize them. It's a side yard setback to the house on the left side, 2.36 feet where 5 feet's required. The combined side yard setback, they're proposing 11.1 feet. Where?
They propose an
8.86 feet where 11.1 feet's required. And there's a side yard setback on the left side to the deck of 2.36 feet also, where 5 feet's required. And now with the front yard landscaping coverage, as shown, 60% is required. They're at 27.9%. But as that's going to go up, because as a condition, they're going to shorten the driveway and put about 6 feet of landscaping at the end of the driveway, between the end of the driveway and the house, that end of the driveway. And they'll submit something to to be reviewed and approved in Mr. McLaren's discretion, and we'll get a more up-to-date number, but it certainly should go higher than 27.9 if that's what you're at now.
That's correct.
Then I'll also note you'll add gutters to the house on the side facing the neighbor at 7403 Monmouth Avenue, and the standard conditions, subject to anything else in Mr. McLaren's report unless otherwise addressed on the record tonight. Applicant will comply with any representations it made, and subject to any outside approvals that may be necessary. They need a non-conversion agreement for this, because they're just under, right?
No, it's just a crawl space.
Okay. That said, we'll need a motion and a second.
I'll make that motion. Second.
Richard Patterson?
Seeing as how they could raise this house with no variances, and by granting the variances, there's less impact on the neighbors, and the house will still be smaller or lower than the neighbor's house, and the fact that it's only 1,800 square feet when it's completed, I think it's a modest addition. I think it helps the city bring it into compliance. It helps the flood ratings. I vote yes.
Michael Richmond?
Okay, so if you remodel the house, we have something called the 50% rule. And if you kept that basement, then you would only be able to put 50% of the assessed value of the house, not the whole property, which would really probably give you nothing. So then you think, okay, so maybe we just tear it down. If you tear it down and you conform, then you can only do a two-story house, but it's still going to be, you could probably do parking underneath. So bottom line is maybe it's another 2 or whatever feet away from that property line, but it's going to be higher. You're still going to be able to get it. Because I think for this property, the highest and best use is what they're talking about doing. Another thing, it doesn't just benefit the contractor, it also benefits the city, because when you take a house and bring it up to the standard, then it reduces the flood insurance rate. It helps for the city in general. So for all those reasons, I'm going to approve it.
Stephen Giuseppe?
Yes, I agree with Mr. Richmond and Mr. Patterson. I think this is a much better alternative than what can be taking place if we were to raise the house, because it's going to be smaller, lower, and it is an improvement and a positive step towards the flood rating system in the city, and I think it definitely meets the C2 variances, and I approve.
Dan Adams?
To echo Mr. Giuseppe's comments, I agree with the fact that it's going to keep the home lower by going and following Mr. Patterson and Mr. Richmond's comments as well. I also like the fact that there's going to be improvement to the city CRS rating. And to me, it's aesthetically pleasing, and it's going to be a nice fit to the neighborhood and actually improve the homes in the neighborhood, the value of the homes. The added landscape in the front, if that's added, I'm totally in support, and I agree with this and support this.
John Pitts?
I agree with what everyone has said already. I guess the only additional I would make is, we're always striving for affordable homes in Margate, and this will be an affordable home if and when the owner ever decides to sell it. Trying to attract families and year-round residents to Margate, I think that's something that this home would attract. I approve.
Drew Campbell?
I agree with all the other board members. All the comments that they made, I approve.
Rich Tolson?
Nothing further to add, I approve.
Patty Rosenberg?
I also approve.
Craig Palmisano?
Dilapidated house on a 30-foot lot. Not much you can do with it. but you're doing a lot with it, and it's gonna improve the neighborhood and help Margate out, and I'm also in favor of it.
Approval is granted with 9 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you all.
Okay. Our third and final case is it Brittany? Okay. Brittany and Jonathan Santoro, 300 North Jerome Avenue, Block 512.02, Lot 1, located in the S40 zoning district, seeking C variance relief for a driveway on Amherst Avenue, front yard setback on Jerome Avenue, and potentially others for the construction of a new single-family home. Current on taxes, water, and sewer payments, proof of advertising, and notifications provided. Represented by owner.
Okay, Ms. Santoro, I'll just get you sworn in. Mr. Stork, are you going to speak as well, I assume?
Yes.
And Mr. Santoro?
Yes, sir.
So why don't you just go down the line, give us your name and business address, name and address. I'll swear the three in together.
Sure. Brittany Santoro, 300 North Jerome Avenue, Margate, New Jersey, 08402. Jonathan Santoro, 300 North Jerome Avenue, Margate, New Jersey. Richard Stork, 4901 Harbor Beach Boulevard, N1, Brigantine, New Jersey.
Okay, and if you can each please raise your right hand, each swear affirm the testimony you will give tonight will be the truth?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I think I heard 3 yeses, so we're good. All right, why don't, whoever's going to lead off.
I'll lead.
Okay, go ahead.
So we're year-round residents. We have a young son who's 2 years old. I've lived here since I was 6 and went to school here, so I want to recreate that for my son. We live on the busiest street in Margate, being Jerome. So when we first were looking to just renovate the home, met with multiple contractors, and the consensus was the home's just not worth saving. Unfortunately, it's not one of those quintessential Margate homes. It was just better to knock it down and build new. So when we were designing the house with Richie, safety was the #1 priority for our son to play. So utilizing our front yard on Amherst just seemed ideal. However, we have a very harsh setback on Jerome Avenue, being that we have 2 prevailing front yards instead of a side yard, that being 20.4. So that is almost a third of our lot frontage if we did utilize Amherst Avenue as the front. Also, if we did use that as, that space would essentially just be wasted space. We couldn't put a pool in that front yard. We couldn't even fence it in for our son to play. We're also seeking a variance for the parking, the curb cuts being on Amherst. Currently, it's on Jerome, and parking is very difficult getting in and out of the driveway. So we were hoping to situate the parking in the garage off of Amherst Avenue and have the curb cuts there. I also did want to note that the home would be flood compliant. It would not only help our flood ratings, it would help the city's flood ratings. And we also are building a modest home for what could be on the property. It's right now, I think, 2641 is the square footage, and we also have 44% landscaping as opposed to the required 30. I think we could have built a home well over about 3,500 square feet there, so we're keeping it very modest. We're not looking for, a huge 3-story, or 2.5 rather. It would just be a 2-story home, and even with that limited square footage, we can't situate it on Amherst with that harsh setback. Then I can let Richie take over.
Sure. Mr. Stork, it's not going to be an issue, but can you just give the board a brief description of your background? You're a licensed architect in New Jersey.
Yes, I am a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey, and I run my own firm called Stork Architecture LLC out of Brigantine.
Okay. And we'll accept his credentials. We just have to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. So as Brittany stated, the biggest issue when we were designing this house was the safety of the family and the young children that live in the home. Right now, the setback off Jerome Avenue is over 20 feet. So given that the distance from Jerome Avenue to the rear setback line towards Kenyon Avenue is only 64 and a half feet. We wouldn't have much space to work with in terms of designing a house and creating a usable backyard to be able to fence in for, kids to safely play. In addition to that, situating the driveway on Amherst takes away the danger of having to pull out into Jerome Avenue during busy rush hour traffic. So it's really a factor of safety here, and we're just trying to utilize the lot as best we can. In addition, we're maintaining over 16, almost 17 feet to the next neighbor on Jerome Avenue, so we're keeping a little bit of distance there as well.
Could you make that driveway 18 feet so you get rid of the variance? 6 inches isn't going to make a difference.
That's fine.
I'd like to comment on that, too.
Yeah.
I think, I was going to say it should be wider, because there's no parking on that side of the street, and with cars turning around on the Amherst,
6 inches?
I think they should make it wider.
So the idea in making it 18 feet 6 inches was that each edge of the driveway aligned with the garage doors. So ideally, we would like to keep it 18.6.
Or
If that's what you recommend, okay.
you're not affecting on-street parking at all, because there's no parking on that,
Right.
that block at all. And I think if they have a wider area to turn, to back out, with cars coming down Jerome, turning on to Amherst, the site safety and the timing is better.
But they got 18 feet, it's not 10 feet.
Right.
Then 6 inches.
6 inches.
I don't care. If
Yeah,
you're saying it's
I'd say 20 feet is ideal for that location.
We'll take 20.
That's just my recommendation.
Does everybody understand that? It's not taken away from the parking, because there's no parking there anyway, and it is a safer situation in that area. I mean, Jerome and Amherst Avenue is tight.
And moving the parking to Amherst Avenue, you're actually gaining a parking spot on Jerome Avenue.
You are, yes.
Right.
Because you're taking that curb cut out.
Right. Okay. Good.
If you like, I can read my report in the
Yeah,
packet. Just while we're at it, Thank you. The report is based on the application of Brittany and Jonathan Santoro, 300 North Jerome Avenue, which is actually Jerome Boulevard at this location, Block 512.01, Lot 1, located in S40 Single Family Zoning District. Seeking C variances, they have to meet the positive and negative criteria. Again, the hardship is based on 2 front yards and are based on they have to comply with 2 prevailing front yard setbacks. And of course, Jerome Avenue being as wide as it is, the setback's a little bit further back, so that provides a little bit of hardship for them. Mr. Stork and I actually met a couple times ago over the project, and we tried to get that driveway off of Jerome Avenue, seeing what, it's 5 lanes of traffic. Very difficult to get in and out. So the variances are as follows. One is a front yard setback for the building on Jerome Avenue, whereas prevailing front yard setback is 20.4 feet, 22 feet exists, and 6.83 feet is proposed. And again, we met and we discussed why we had to be at 6.83 feet, and the idea was to get the outside area away from Jerome Avenue back to what you would call the backyard, even though it's a side yard, to give them a buffer area. Otherwise, they had an unusable yard. Curb cut width, whereas they're 18.6 feet, 10 feet exists, and 20 feet is proposed. Curb cut location, again, the idea of the zoning ordinance was to get for corner lots, to get the curb cuts off the main streets. This location, Amherst Avenue is busy itself, but not like Jerome Avenue. And again, you have 5 lanes on Jerome, and you have 2 lanes and no parking, so you won't have any obstructions on Amherst Avenue to pull in and out. So again, my opinion is that is the better plan to go with. Again, I have my other comments. They're going to comply with all the landscape requirements, street trees, shrubs. They did move the fence back on Jerome Avenue back to where the front yard setback is.
Yes, so the fence that encloses the backyard would be aligned with the prevailing setback, not the face of the house on Jerome Avenue.
And my thought on that is you don't want 50 feet of just sheer fence, wall, windows.
Yeah,
Gives it a little bit of relief there.
I have some proposed from revised plans if you guys would like to take a look at them.
In this house, we'll have to have a non-conversion agreement for the ground floor. That's, and again, I have no really other further comments. I think it was a good application, and again, we did spend some time together going over this and tried to make it the best of a pretty tough location. That concludes my report.
You're also going to have the fireplace is going to face Jerome Avenue, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so it gives it a little more interest on that side, a little
Some
more
relief.
architectural detail than just having a, flat wall with windows, so.
Yeah,
I like that.
exactly. I think the idea with situating the house the way that it did, like you said, with the fireplace facing Jerome Avenue,
Right.
The number of windows that we have on that facade was to kind of give it some architectural character as opposed to just a monolithic wall.
Right, great.
Also, with the, on the Jerome Avenue side, you have 6.83 to the property line, and there's still another 2 feet of grass. So it's really 8 foot, .83 of grass you have to the building from the sidewalk.
Yep.
So that adds to it better.
Anybody else from the board have any questions? Comments?
Do you plan
No?
to put any landscaping in front of the fence?
In front of the fence?
Yeah.
Where, is that where we're putting the arbor, like the arborvitae?
Yeah.
Something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not just going to be fenced. There will be, landscaping.
Okay, great.
And the addition of 2 street trees per,
Per yeah, so 4 in total, yes.
Are you gonna go back to the red paint like the house?
My poor husband painted that white by hand.
I used to live in the neighborhood.
So, yeah,
I
you're
could not
familiar.
believe it when they painted that house.
I know.
Bright red.
It was two-toned red and pink, yes. Yes.
Question, is the pool part of the plans when you're building the house?
That is the goal, yes. As long as
And you're
we
concerned
stay in
about
budget.
safety for your child?
There will be a fence.
There'll be an
enclosing-
additional fence
yes,
enclosing the pool? Okay,
Absolutely.
good.
Okay. Everybody from the board done? Anyone from the public?
Eric Goldstein, 2 Exeter Court. I think this is the absolute,
You swear to tell the truth?
I do, Mr. Manos. I think this is the absolute perfect type of case the board wants to see. You have a young family who bought a house, a little bit older, flood damaged, did some work to fix it up, and now really doing something to make it great, just changing the orientation from Jerome onto Amherst, getting rid of the parking spot, getting rid of the parking curb cut on Jerome. There'll be one more spot there. The county will like that, and then changing the orientation to Amherst. This is the prototypical case that the board should want to see. I walk my dog by there all the time. It's really, if this house is built the way it's designed, it's going to be perfect for the neighborhood. Maybe something that spurs other younger couples to do kind of a similar thing. So I'm very much in favor of it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question at this point?
Sure.
Mr. Goldstein, you just said something that caught my attention. If this house is built the way it's proposed, what does that mean?
It means that the plans are phenomenal. They look like it could be perhaps an expensive build, but if they're able to build this house, it's beautiful. It's a
Don't
great house.
disagree.
Yeah.
What would change?
Who knows, the way this architect designed the house, it looks like it should be an architectural digest. So if they're able to pull this off and have it look like it does on the plans, then
Well, here's the deal. And if you get variances, then you pretty much have to design the house the way it was drawn.
the
Is that
materials
correct?
might be somewhat.
Not necessarily. You just have to comply with the variances
Right,
that were
as long as
granted.
we need the code.
Oh, okay.
It
All right.
happens all the time.
Yeah.
It happens all the time, and you see a house and say, that's not what I approved, but what was changed did not need a variance.
And this guy's design is top notch. It looks
Yeah.
wonderful. If they can put that together. Right.
So,
we're not
Mr.
in-
Tolson, leave
No,
him
we-
alone.
So hopefully they can make it look like
Yeah.
his plan looks, because if they can, it's a great addition to
We
the town.
plan on trying our very best to meet it, everything's been bidded out and we're looking good so far, so everything should pan
I would
out
say
the
one
way.
thing I definitely want to see is the fireplace on Jerome Avenue.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't want to see a blank wall there. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, no, of course,
So,
absolutely.
that's, yeah.
No.
All right?
Yeah.
Okay, Leo?
Okay, it's three variances, it's the front yard three C variances, I'll summarize them. Front yard setback to the house along Jerome, they're at 6.83 feet, 20.4 feet is required, it's a corner lot, we heard the testimony. The curb cut width, it's going to be 20 feet. 18 is required, no more than 20 feet. You can go, no, you can do less, I suppose, but no more than 20 feet. 18 is the maximum, and then the curb cut location, it's going to be on Amherst Avenue as opposed to Jerome for all the reasons we explained. The conditions, I'll note you'll put the landscape in front of that fence to Roger's approval. Then the standard conditions that we put in every resolution to comply with any representations you made, subject to any outside approvals that may be necessary. Shouldn't be many. Anything else in Mr. McLaren's report unless otherwise addressed. And then, I saw you submitted some revised plans to Roger. Whatever he needs, you'll get to him, like 4 sets of compliance plans or whatever he needs. And that said, we'll need a motion, a second, and a roll call vote.
I'll make that motion.
Richard Patterson?
I agree with Mr. Goldstein. Everything he just said. I stood where the corner of the house is going to be. I think it makes much more sense facing Amherst Avenue, and standing on where the corner of the house is, it doesn't affect sight lines coming down Jerome, turning onto Amherst. That setback would be ridiculous if they had to meet that setback. I think it's a great plan, a great addition to Margate. I see no negatives and only positives, and it will certainly get rid of an eyesore. The paint did a little bit, but it was...
No, we know.
The house was an eyesore. It was never kept up. It was always a mess, so
Yeah, it's gotta go.
I approve.
Thank you.
Michael Richmond?
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Patterson. It really is a good thing for the city, a good thing for the neighborhood and the community, and I'm going to approve it.
Stephen Giuseppe?
I'll also approve. I don't have anything else to add. I approve.
Dan Adams?
I'm going to start off with, I believe that, Mrs. Santoro, I believe that you are going to make sure in good faith that this happens as it sits there. And based on your testimony and based on what you said, I can assure you that you will make all this work.
I will.
By gaining the parking spot on Jerome Avenue, that's huge. We talked about it today at the commission meeting. Once again, parking is of the utmost here in the city of Margate. When we can gain a parking spot on a busy avenue with the sports complex and the recreation across the street, I think it's a bonus. And what you're going to build here is a beautiful home, and I approve.
Thank you.
John Pitts?
7 of the 16 corner homes on Jerome are already facing the side street, so I mean, we're not doing anything exceptional here. I remain unconvinced that it's safer to have the driveway on Amherst than Jerome. But I think, as Chief Adams pointed out, having another parking spot, especially with the facilities across the street, I walk across Amherst and Jerome every day, and that's a nasty corner. It's really a bad corner. So I think what you're doing is great. As I said earlier, I love seeing young families in Margate. We need more of it. My daughter-in-law is a teacher at Ross School, so we need to keep her employed.
Aw.
So I approve, and good luck.
Thank you.
Drew Campbell?
Yeah, I agree with everyone's saying. I know that's a unique corner because you can't turn on red there in that shoulder area or parking area. So now you're going to have another parking spot there, which is going to, in a weird way, slow down traffic a little bit because there's going to be another car parked there, which is a great thing. And I haven't been keeping tabs all year, but how many parking spots we have actually gained this year in the city. It's been a handful that we've gained, so we're always looking to get more parking. So I approve.
Great, thank you.
Rich Tolson?
I approve with the hopes that you bring this to completion as designed.
Trying our very
It's
best.
beautiful. I don't live far from there, and it'll be,
Better to look at.
yeah,
Thank you.
good luck.
Thank you.
Patty Rosenberg.
It's okay. I'm always delighted to see young families move into the area. I moved here 40 years ago as a young person and raised my children. They went to the schools and welcome you back. I think the house is very nice and I approve.
Thank you.
Craig Palmisano.
I also have seen a couple houses on Monmouth and also on Fremont that face the street and not Jerome Avenue. And they've been there for years and years, and it's going to be a beautiful home, much better than what's there now. And with your children, use the field across the street. Playgrounds there and a
we
big
do.
field. Please use those fields.
We do.
Okay?
Yes.
I approve.
Thank you so much.
Approval is granted with 9 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you. That's it, yeah, we.
You'll gain a spot there,
Yes,
too.
I was just gonna say, he takes care of that for now.
With that pull right there,
Yeah.
do it.
So it'll be great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Good luck.
You're welcome. Good luck.
If you could come sign this form, and I'll give you a copy as well.
We have to keep that. That wasn't my fault. Just kick me.
Goes into my recycling or the recycling here?
Will you give it back to me?
Palmer, are we going to keep the Monmouth Avenue print, or?
Yeah, just don't get rid of it.
Okay. Everybody hear that? The Monmouth Avenue print, keep that?
Collect them? All right, give them back to me, please. Thank you.
Okay.
Just the
Yeah,
Monmouth
we'll take 'em
Avenue
back.
application.
Oh, Monmouth Avenue?
No, I'll just,
Oh, the one.
They have a tendency to disappear.
return.
Not that we don't
to
trust
me
the car
Monmouth
thieves going
Avenue
around stealing plans
application
Oh, just the
because-
Monmouth.
from unlocked cars.
Yes, just that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right. Anything else?
Yeah, we got one more. Yeah, we got one more thing we have to do. This shouldn't be too long, but we,
Craig, we got one more thing going on.
all right. We have to go into executive session. For the new members, this is from something obviously before your time, but we'll just note you when we vote to go in and we take action as abstentions, but you can certainly listen in and ask any questions. But we now have to go into executive session, which is closed to the public, and that's to discuss matters related to pending litigation and attorney-client privilege matters. The pending litigation is 7811 Atlantic City Condominium Association versus City of Margate, which is pending in the Atlantic County Superior Court. We will not take any official action in closed session. Any official action we take, and I do anticipate that we will, we have to the law says we have to come back out, go back on the record in open session, and then take any official action. So we have resolution that I distributed. It's resolution number 34, which just is a resolution that authorizes us to go into executive session. We can just get a motion, a second, and an all in favor, and then we can lock the door and go into executive session. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone? Okay, we're now back in public session. The board just met in executive session to discuss pending litigation, 7811 Atlantic Avenue versus City of Margate and Rotus LLC, pending the Superior Court, New Jersey. That's the Roberts litigation for short. The board discussed matters regarding that and attorney-client privilege matters. There's now a resolution before the board, resolution number 35. It's a resolution authorizing the City of Margate Planning Board to enter into and execute a settlement agreement and mutual release of pending litigation. That's the litigation I just referred to. I'll just say it for the record, 7811 Atlantic Condominium Association, Inc. versus the City of Margate, the City of Margate Planning Board, and Rotus LLC. There's 3 Rotus entities, but that's not that important. A written settlement agreement specifying the terms has been prepared and reviewed by the City of Margate Planning Board, and the City of Margate Planning Board is desirous of ratifying the settlement agreement mutually release and authorizing its execution. And now therefore, the City of Margate Planning Board resolved that the settlement agreement mutually be and is hereby ratified. So that's basically what the resolution says. Again, it's resolution number 35-2024, and by adopting this resolution, we'll attach it to the settlement agreement. It authorizes Rich to sign it, and our part of that litigation will be over. So need a motion and a second, and we should do a roll call vote, and you can just exclude the 3 on the 3 new people on that roll call vote. So motion.
What are we going to say when we approve the?
Motion to adopt resolution
Right.
number 35,
Right.
authorizing the execution of the settlement agreement.
Right, so when we do the roll call vote, we'll.
Yes, or just a yes,
Just
or
a yes.
no, if for
All right.
whatever reason.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to be that, but
Okay.
yeah, so we just need that motion in a second.
Okay. Anybody?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Richard Patterson?
Yes.
Craig Palmisano?
Yes.
Michael Richmond?
Yes.
John Pitts?
Yes.
Stephen Giesecke?
Yes.
Drew Campbell?
Yes.
Okay. And I guess we could do a motion to close, unless we have something else. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, John.
We had talked some time ago about open ground floors. There was some internal discussion. Where does that sit?
Speak into the microphone, John, sorry.
We had some discussion in the past about open ground floors, to prevent people making habitable first floors, partial open first floors. Where does that stand today?
We should, Tom and I have talked about it. We've looked at other sites. Actually, Ocean City there's some people in Ocean City that really want to expand on that too. We can incorporate that as part of the master plan discussion, where we can, I think we asked Terry Cummings to design that house on Atlantic Avenue to keep that one open.
Right.
And I think we ought to look at that as see how that comes out. But yes, we are continuing, considering that.
Well, when is the master plan coming up?
We have to get it in the budget, and we're hopefully get under contract or get RPs by spring.
Okay.
It's
So-
due in 2026, right?
Every 10 years, it was finalized in 2017. You're allowed to do it, you can revisit it anytime you want, but you're mandatory every 10 years.
10.
It used to be 6, then they changed it to 10.
Commissioners are talking about, I think the commissioners are talking about reviewing it every 3 years or something.
You can re-examine it whenever you want. And again, you can look at small bits and pieces of it. At some point in time, we're going to be forced to have a fair share housing plan element, which we do not have it now. That could be a big, serious burden on the city of Margate, but there's other towns that are in the same boat as we are.
Roger, you and I and Tom had talked about it. I thought we had talked about it doing it before the master plan. You think it's best to wait for the master plan?
We're so close, I think we ought to wait.
Okay.
Because one of the items we're talking about with the master plan is reducing, like, building coverage, introducing an FAR, and how's that going to look? We might not need to open it up. It might.
Okay.
But I think we should open it up. To me, it works.
Well, I just knew that's what we talked about. So
Right.
But I think we should, I agree. Since we're so close to the master plan anyway, I would rather
Okay.
wait.
But that's going to be number one, high up on a totem pole there, on the priority list. So I just want to bring up some new business that was just part of the old business in executive session, where the outdoor dining legislation passed by the legislature and the assembly has to be signed by the governor. And what that does is, it's a big deal. The outdoor dining that we've been approving by resolution every year is going to be permanent now. And it's going to allow 75% of all parking spaces to be occupied by outdoor dining.
By what?
75% of all parking spaces, like,
On the
Site.
Stephen Cookies.
On site.
Right.
And adjacent sites. So Carmen, like Tomatoes, their property is across the street, so it's not really adjacent, it's not connected. That'll be allowed now.
Right.
Before it was COVID, it was kind of, ABC kind of gave a little bit of relief on that. Plus, he had a separate liquor license for that lot anyway. But this will be law now, where not contiguous properties would be, if they're owned by the same person, they're going to be allowed to use it. So it basically renders our commercial parking requirements null and void. We're going to have an application coming in. I don't want to discuss the application or name it, but they're going to come in for a permanent structure where they used to have a temporary structure for the outdoor dining. And I do know there's probably 2 or 3 other businesses that are going to be seeking the same thing. I told them all to hold off until this law gets signed off and we can be consistent. Segueing into that, I've been meeting with the Commissioner of Public Safety and Chief Hankinson, as well as Solicitor Scott Abbott, where we need to refine our outdoor dining ordinances. Right now, our outdoor dining ordinance really addresses sidewalk dining, outdoor music. It doesn't define on-site, like Roberts, doesn't define Tomatoes, anything outdoors. So we're going to have one ordinance, outdoor dining, on-site, outdoor dining on public places. So what this also does, it legalizes what Venture's is doing. So, but we have to collect a fee from insurers, which is a benefit to the city.
What's Ventura's doing?
The beach bar.
Oh, the beach.
Right. You know, they had a pretty long battle with the DEP, and I guess perseverance works out, but I do want to point out, we were one of the first towns in the state of New Jersey to allow the outdoor dining, and it was so successful that I don't think anybody voted for it, against it in the state assembly or whatever. But it's proof that it works. It's proof that people will find parking no matter where they go. It's proof that they find other modes of transportation to get to and from. So Captain Andy's, everyone's giving us crap about granting a variance for 54 parking spaces. They don't need them now. It could be outdoor dining.
Right.
So it's a trade-off. So again, I just wanted to mention that to you. When the governor signs it, and it'll be law, we still have to do interior work here to.
Are you going to be the one to make that clear to the residents when they're complaining?
Absolutely, absolutely.
See the chief. See the chief.
Not me. Hankinson.
No, I think that's great that, like you said, I mean, I've heard some of the things about how the outdoor dining on our end has to be like tightened up, right? Yeah.
Right, because we relied on, what the state allowed through the COVID rules and regulations, and we kind of loosely based it on our ordinance for outdoor dining, kind of applied that. We based it on a resolution, and we made everyone get a zoning permit. So now we'll still make everyone get a zoning permit, but it'll be one time.
So I think Essex Avenue is going to get shut down permanently?
I don't think so.
No. No.
Hey, it did work.
If we could do anything with Ventura's, can we lower the price of the beach bar? I walked up there with a 20, ordered 2 drinks, and got no change. 2 beers, $20.
I was going to say, Dan, that's what happens when you hand them a $5 bill.
The beach bar is $8 a drink.
Well, if the city collects a fee, which we are entitled to, maybe you have to bring a $50, right? Anyhow, I think the outdoor dining is proven to work. I think it's good for Margate. It's attracting people to come here and visit our wonderful restaurants we have, and that's just wanted to add that to our conversation.
Great.
It's going to be interesting to see next summer with the addition of the couple restaurants. I think you're going to even see more people in the city of Margate than what we've seen in the past.
Yeah. Visiting. Okay. Anything else?
And again, I'd like to welcome the new board members.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Welcome.
Make a motion to adjourn.
All second.
All in favor?
Aye.